Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Daily Six. We're airing this video on Thanksgiving morning, so happy Thanksgiving to everybody. If you're watching it later on, I hope that you're filled with thanks and gratitude for the Lord. Let's read Acts chapter 22, verse 22 through 30. So that's Acts 22, verse 22 through 30. See what the Lord might show you in this very short passage, and come on back and let's talk. All right, so have you seen something that the Lord might speak to you on this Thanksgiving morning out of Acts chapter 22, verse 22 through 30? If the Lord hadn't shown you anything yet, it might be good to let Him speak to you before we look at it and talk together. All right, so short passage. And in the context, again, we've been reading all week long. Paul has been seized in Jerusalem. The Romans, there was a big crowd. The Jews had stirred up, and the Romans have grabbed Paul, put him in custody, and they're trying to sort this out. You know, Paul, why are you creating all this problem for us here in Jerusalem and so forth? And so Paul got to speak and share his story. He shared his testimony with the mob. He told them about how Jesus met him, how he was so passionate about Judaism, that he was doing the same thing they were doing right now, is persecuting the church. And yet Jesus met him. This guy named Ananias came and showed him that God had chosen him. And we asked you yesterday to pray about, what has God chosen you for? How has God spoken to you? But here's the thing that I notice in this story is I'm trying to think about what's the application? What's the point of this? Well, in this particular story, Paul has shared his testimony, and then in verse 32, the crowd listened to Paul until he said this. Now, this we find in verse 21, what the Lord had said, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. And Jews and Gentiles, they didn't get along very well. But the Jewish people actually had a lot of prejudice towards Gentiles. Those are non-Jews. The Jewish people thought they were the only ones who were chosen by God, which they were uniquely chosen by God to be a family, to demonstrate a relationship between God and man, but they weren't the only ones. But they'd gotten arrogant with that and thought that, well, because God chose us as a special people, we must be the only ones. So when the Lord reveals to Paul, you're going to be used to reach Gentiles, that the Jews just couldn't conceive of that. So notice in verse 22, they listened to Paul till he said this. Then they raised their voices and shouted, rid the earth of him. He is not fit to live. As they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, that's again when the Roman commander, ordered Paul to be taken back in the barracks, and he directed he be flogged and questioned in order to find out why the people were shouting at him like this. All right, so here's a couple things I'm noticing. So first off, the reaction of the religious people, these are theoretically very religious people, theoretically Jewish people who are serving the same God that we are, the same Lord that we are. Theoretically, these are people that have been taught to love God with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength, Deuteronomy chapter 6. To love your neighbor as yourself, which was one of the laws in Leviticus that Jesus would later say was the second greatest command, goes right with you love God, you're going to love your neighbor as yourself. So theoretically, these Jewish people are supposed to love God and love other people. And yet when they met somebody who did not meet their precise doctrinal position, Paul was Jewish and he was following Jesus as the Jewish Messiah, but they didn't accept him. Their reaction was, rid the earth of him. So two things stand out to me in that. First off, if you're the believer and the world wants nothing to do with you, the world wants you gone, well, then you're probably actually right over top the target. We say that like in warfare, if the enemy's shooting at you, you're right smack dab over the target. And so there is something to be said. Jesus said, you're going to follow me, the world's going to hate you, not because you're anything. The world is going to hate you because it hated me first, Jesus said. And so persecution attends to following Jesus. So that's the first thing I see. So you should take courage. If, I don't know what your situation is this holiday weekend, if you're spending time with family and some of them are uncomfortable with your faith, or, if you're dealing with that, if there's that awkwardness and discomfort around your faith in Jesus, well, then you're probably actually following Jesus well, right? With this caveat, here's the second thing I see in this. It is very common It's very easy for religious people to get filled with enough pride about their belief system that they become very antagonistic, even wishing people would go away. I'll never forget, I was sitting down with a very, very mature believer, someone I profoundly respect. And the topic of politics came up, at a particular political person who is fairly reviled, who's got a really nasty character. And I remember this profound believer saying, I just wish this person would die. And I thought, oh man, that's not the heart of God. Now, we don't only do that with politics. We also do that with, we tend to have that reaction, that negative reaction to people that are unlike us. And so I think the thing the Lord is saying to me, first off, do not be dissuaded. Do not be discouraged when you face relational opposition, relational discomfort with your faith. But secondly, maybe more importantly in this text, don't be like these Jewish believers who were supposed to love the Lord and love other people and become hard-hearted. Don't be like this, Chris. The Lord's saying to me, don't become hard-hearted and mean and unloving towards people who are not following him. All right, this video is going to end. Go grab 6 more minutes, spend 6 more minutes with the Lord, pull away in a quiet place on your holiday weekend, and give God some time and reflect. How well do you love him, and how well do you love others? All right, we'll see you next week. Pick up more on the book of Acts on the Daily 6. Thanks for hanging with us.